All right, deja vu all over again. I think that's a phrase attributable to Yogi Berra, who used to be a baseball player a million years ago, who used to be a baseball manager a million years ago. Essentially saying deja vu all over again means there's a feeling of familiarity, that you've experienced something before. And I'm sure we could certainly start this podcast, the Wednesday 1904 Welcome into the Section, by talking about the deja vu all over again, watching Padres and Giants, a couple of low-scoring games, extra innings, some curious decisions made by instant replay, and the Padres ended up winning against Sleepy Bob and the San Francisco Giants, now taking the first two games of a four-game series in the Bay Area. So, little deja vu all over again. Welcome in, John. Good to chat. How are you?
I'm doing good. Almost back to 100%. Enjoyed watching a Padres win last night. Literally, my wife, who's trying to go to bed early because she's still fighting off the remnants of COVID. Last night, she was like, I kind of want to go to bed. How much longer is this game going to take? And I looked, and there was 2 outs in the ninth inning. And I'm like, well, probably only about 30 seconds. And then I yelled from the living room, oh, they tied it up. And she's like, so you're not coming to bed for a while? And I was like, I'll be there like 20 minutes. And 20 minutes later, I was in bed. And the Padres had a victory, and that was delightful.
Wow, you talk about deja vu all over again. So yesterday it was you and I, unscripted and unrehearsed. We both got onto the podcast when we were recording on Tuesday and said the exact same thing. We both thought that Jose Iglesias was Manny Machado. And the same exact thing happened to me where Leah said, how much longer in this game? I said, well, it is the ninth inning. And she goes, well, unless it goes to extras, and she's not up to speed on the new Ghost Runner rules. But she also decided that she was going to turn in a little bit early. And then, we go to extra innings, and the Padres end up winning in extra innings. And by the time I got to bed, she was completely asleep. So
Ghost Runners, very, very popular with wives. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming husbands of women who watch baseball. Spouses of baseball fans love the Ghost Runner.
Does anybody still complain about that? I'm sure somewhere, like Christopher Mad Dog Russo is yelling about it because that's his whole thing. But I mean, does anybody still complain about this, or is everybody, it's kind of like the pitch clock. Remember, everybody's like, what? The beauty of the sport, there is no clock. Nobody talks about that anymore. Although we have seen more pitch clock violations in this series than I think I've seen over the last 2 years. But that being off to the side for a second, I don't know that anybody is like really, really still dug in on the Ghost Runner thing, are they?
The only thing is, I like a week or two ago, I got to hear one of my favorite broadcasts, which is Bob Scanlon doing play-by-play with Tony Gwynn Jr. as the analyst on radio. First, they were talking about the nomenclature. They were like, why do they call it Ghost Runner? Ghosts don't exist. They should call it the sun. And they settled on like Phantom Runner or something like that. But then they kind of both talked about, because they're both players that played in the 90s and the 2000s before this thing existed. And they were like, I don't know, it feels kind of cheap to win that way. Like, they weren't against it. You could just tell that they were like, this isn't the baseball that I grew up with, that I played. And it feels a little bit like they're trying to wrap the game up quickly because that's what they're doing. And fans love that shit. So I imagine there's some former ball players who are just like, I don't know, I kind of liked it the way it was. But fans? No, all the fans got to love it.
Yeah, I would think so. All right, a couple things here quickly because I don't want to spend a ton of words on the Padres. I'm sure everybody has Padres takes here today. I just have a couple things on this, John. Number one, I think the Padres are set up, at least on paper, pretty well with Pivetta and Cease in 3 and 4. It's a 4-game series in San Francisco, so I think they're set up pretty well. There's two things that stood out to me. Credit Kevin Acee of the Union Tribune and the Padres Daily. I don't know if you did or didn't see any of this stuff. Number one, I don't think I realized that Jake Cronenworth has been hit by more pitches than any other Padre in Padre history.
A lot.
Yeah, like not even close. He has 52 after last night. Chase Headley, 38. Kevin Kuzminoff, 36. Gene Tennis, whammy, 35. Tim Flannery at 32. I did not realize that Jake Cronenworth has been hit that many times. Did you?
No. And actually, I did the one you left off at the bottom of the list was Tatis. It was in the 20s. And I was like, can Tatis catch Cronenworth? I was like, I don't think so. Maybe. But I have to imagine that's Cronenworth stands close to the plate type of thing. I don't know. It doesn't seem random.
It does not. And I just, it's just as a quick aside, I don't really have any point there at all. Also, an all-time just great quote from Manny Machado. So Manny Machado, who ended up having the game-winning hit, or the game tying hit in the ninth inning, who had a 4-for-4 night with 4 singles and a walk. So Manny had a very good night and played pretty well, made some spectacular plays. I thought it was Jose Iglesias out there. I couldn't come up with the right social media post. I'm sure somebody else beat me to it anyway.
That's really good, though.
Yeah. So, he came up with a big hit last night. And I love this quote afterwards from AC's Daily, Padres Daily. He was asked about the at-bat in the top of the ninth. Quote, "Not trying to do too much. AJ Preller tells me all the time he doesn't like when they start cheering my name because then I'm trying to get too big and try to do too much, but just not trying to do too much. Know the situation, know what the game's calls for. In that situation, bases loaded, fast runner second, got to hit a gap, single gets the job done. Try to be short, blah, blah, blah. The rest of it's
I wanted to talk about this.
I just love that line. AJ tells me all the time that he doesn't like it when the fans start chanting Manny Machado's name. I wonder how he felt when they would chant Ha-Sung Kim's name or any other Padres name, or if this is very, very specific to Manny Machado. That is Coach Preller down there trying to figure things out. How about that?
Right. I thought that same thing. Like, is this specific to Manny? I think it's meant to be. And then the other one was, I was like, how many players in Major League Baseball could start a sentence with, my GM tells me all the time. Like,
Right.
What?
Right.
What do you mean your GM tells you all the time that he doesn't like when the fans chant your name? What? Like, I saw that and I reread it like 4 times because I was like, am I misunderstanding what he said? No, he's saying AJ Preller is telling him that he doesn't like when things are going really well for Manny because then Manny goes for the home run instead of the single. And it's like, cool, that obviously that lesson is working, but like I had big like Moneyball vibes. Like,
yes!
why is the GM in the clubhouse? Why is he talking to the star player? Like that quote was very interesting to me.
Yeah, that you took the words right out of my mouth because one of the things when people would ask me about the movie Moneyball, having read the book and seen the movie, and the book is good and the movie's okay.
The movie's entertaining.
It was fine.
Yeah.
You could find a worse way to spend a couple hours of your life. But when people ask me if it's realistic, if people aren't really in the sports, the one thing I say is, yeah, but you're never going to have a general manager walking through the clubhouse going, hey, Huddy, throw the slider more on 3-2. That's the unrealistic part there. No GM goes walking through the clubhouse saying this sort of shit. But, maybe I stand corrected. I don't know. Maybe, in fact, that it was a little more realistic than I had realized based on the fact that, according to Manny Machado, Preller tells him all the time he doesn't like when they start cheering his name. I love that. I love that Manny said it, and I love that AC printed it because, sometimes some of that stuff maybe, I don't think it's going to create any trouble. We're probably the only people that are going to talk about it. But, I don't know that it stood out to anybody else. No, it's just like such an interesting thing. I'm like, wait a second. The GM says that? Like,
President of baseball operations is telling you that? Like, it's so weird.
Yeah.
So weird.
Fridays, they do that Friar Friday thing on the Fan. And I don't know who's lined up this week. I think every other week they get either Mike Schilt or AJ Preller. So I hope Ben and Woods would at least ask about that on Friday. I don't know what Preller would be willing to give you. But I do think that's one that would certainly, that would pique my interest. If I were doing radio and I were interviewing AJ Preller on Friday, that is absolutely a question that I would have loaded for, not to ambush him, just because I would be really, really curious.
Yeah.
Just if he could give you anything on that, which I suspect he probably wouldn't, but it's worth a shot. I do think it's just worth a shot because that's interesting.
My big takeaway from the game last night, and in that same Padres Daily thing from AC, I think he pointed out that like over the last 6 weeks, the only team scoring less runs per game than the Padres is the Giants. But I left yesterday's game obviously happy that the Padres won, but also like, wow, the Padres just won with like their B pitching staff. Like they were like, yeah, Ryan Bergert, who has never started a game, is going to go like 5 innings. And then we're going to call on Sean Reynolds to throw 45 pitches over like two innings. And then we're going to bring in Matsui, who's usually like the, middle relief guy to come pitch the 8th. And Jeremiah Estrada is going to close it out in the 9th. I'm like, there was no Suarez. There was no Adam. There was no Morahone. And it felt like they were almost willing to, I'm not going to say the Padres were willing to give this one away. It's actually kind of the opposite, and that I think they were so unafraid of the Giants' offense that they were just like, We don't need our best pitchers to win this one. And it worked out for them.
It did, and it was Kolek the previous night, and there was lot of chatter on the Discord about Kolek is going to implode here any second.
Never did.
Never did. So, like I said, it's set up. Now, the sport doesn't work this way, but it is set up with Pivetta and Cease. I know Cease hasn't been as good as anybody would have thought, especially in a walk season, but it is set up for Pivetta and Cease over the next couple of days. So, and that's probably it. I also think taking advantage of mistakes is really a skill in any sport. I could go back a couple of weeks and certainly, SDFC, I'll go and just explain this on a soccer level, then I'll get back into the baseball. When Galaxy shanks that pass at the end of the match in the 94th minute, 95th minute, and Anders Dreyer picks it up, passes it to Chucky Lozano, and SDFC walks off on essentially the last kick of the game, and they beat Galaxy 2-1. What you do when other teams make mistakes, I do think is a skill. And how you respond to mistakes, whether it's your team making a mistake or the other team making a mistake, to me, John, and we all talk about statistics and we could talk about all the other things that factor into sports. But one of the things I think the Patriots were the first team that I really realized they just knew how to capitalize on other teams' mistakes.
Yeah.
And they knew how to limit the damage when they themselves would make a mistake, that they wouldn't panic. And oftentimes in sports, you just see teams panic and you see other teams really thrive in those situations. It feels like the Padres have a little bit of that personality. Remember a game a couple of weeks ago or months ago, whatever it was, where whoever it was the Padres were playing, I forget, but they dropped 2 foul balls that should have been outs, and Manny Machado ends up hitting a home run. Manny was at the plate. He hit 2 foul balls. Both of them were dropped by the opposition, and Manny cranks a homer. And you're like, yeah, okay. Last night, first baseman, San Francisco Giants, probably would have been the end of the game, But, Brandon Lockridge beats out this ground ball, hit the short. You can tell me all about the speed of Lockridge and all that sort of stuff. That's fine. But the first baseman drops it. First baseman drops the ball. Was it a difficult play? Yeah, but have we seen them make difficult plays? Yes. And, the Padres take advantage in that situation. It certainly, I don't know that everything would have unfolded exactly the same way, but, that's an out. That is an out for a game that you're shutting out the opposition. And then it turns into a couple of runs, extra innings, and then before you know it, you're losing. You lose the game. And now you've lost back-to-back. And it feels like even at times where we know the Padres offense isn't very good right now, but it still feels like they do have that quality, that they still have that ability that, maybe it's not going to happen every time. But when you see another team make a mistake, you give the Padres an extra out, just something to be cognizant of, that they seem to have that ability. I've seen it a little bit with SDFC, and I think we're starting to see it maybe a little bit more. It is a skill, in my opinion. Some people will say it's luck. You create your own luck. But, I do think they have a little bit of that. Like, they recognize a moment like, oh, they just gave us an extra out right there. What are we going to do with it? We better take advantage of it. And it certainly happened on Tuesday night.
Yeah, and that's to your point. That's how you win games. And also, that's when you are a team that is struggling offensively and you're lucky enough to go up against another team that's struggling offensively, a lot of times it's going to come down to who takes advantage of the opportunities that are in front of them. And the Padres have been taking advantage. I sent you a screenshot from our Discord last night because Alex Pena, I believe, posted it. And this was before the end of last night's game, so I doubt it included last night's game. He had a bunch of stats on Eric Hosmer's last 169 games with the Padres, and then what Luis Arráez had done in 169 games with the Padres. And the numbers are shockingly similar.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, and that's rough, man. And we talked about this, I feel like last week. Luis Arráez, I actually think his defense at first base has been a little underrated, but the advanced metrics and everything say he's been a bad first baseman.
Mm-hmm.
And that essentially makes him a one-tool player. He's a contact hitter. If you have one tool and that tool is contact hitter, I don't think you can bat under 300 and be an effective player, unless you're like a middle infielder who plays good defense or an outfielder with great speed or something like that. But he's got none of that. And he's playing a position where hitting is almost more important than the fielding aspect of it. And power hitting is very important in that position. He's batting 283 right now. And I think I just saw, like, for the month of May, he hit like 270. And like, that's like, for a normal player, hitting 270, 280, that's fine, because, you know, your on base percentage is going to be like in the 350s, even if you're just like an average kind of walk guy, and you'll have some home runs in there, so your slugging percentage might be like 500. He's hitting 283. His OBP is 317. And his slugging is 410.
Yeah, and you're batting between Fernando Tatis Jr. and Manny Machado for the most part.
He has one tool, and it's, as Dylan said when he came on with us a week or two ago from Letters to AJ, like, he's not even doing the one thing anymore. So I don't know what to do with Luis Arraez. I think the Padres have to seriously think about what first base is going to look like for them next year, and make decisions in the next month or two accordingly, because I don't know. I'm starting to lose faith in Luis Arraez, who I still like watching him hit, but he's becoming a less effective hitter.
It feels also, too, like he's becoming a bit of a polarizing player, at least in the exposure I have to social media, which, granted, is a lot more limited these days than it used to be. But it feels like he's becoming a little bit more polarizing with the fan base, in that almost every game now, I see somebody, every time there's an at-bat where Luis Arraez doesn't do something.
Yeah.
And it's quickly pointed out, oh, and you guys think he's Tony Gwynn? Don't ever put him in the same sentence. You know, so it feels like people have decided now, because he's not Tony Gwynn, you know, that they're going to lash out against Luis Arraez.
That's why the Hosmer comparison is an interesting one.
Yeah, it is, actually, when you look at some of these numbers. And they're different players, and it was different circumstances. So, you know, I understand the point that Alex is making, and I'm glad he brought it up. Certainly it led to a little bit of dialogue over on the Discord channel. By the way, I've been on the Discord channel. I've been very active the last couple of nights. I go to a lot of the different channels. Are you all on the Discord channel? Are you guys paid subscribers to Section 1904? Maybe you're on a free preview. I'm not sure. But we would appreciate the support. You can subscribe to this podcast for as little as $5 a month. You get access to our Discord channel, where you can talk with other fans about the Padres. You can talk with other fans about SDFC, about whiskey, like my buddy Ben posted earlier today, food, tennis, politics,
Have you
all
gone
sorts
in
of
the
stuff
weed
happening
channel?
there. I went into the weed channel just to see what was going on in there, but
Piles of weed.
Lots of weed pictures. Yeah, there's lots of weed pictures.
some good ones. Actually, I saw a couple people complaining. So back on Twitter, there was something called the beer thread, where a bunch of San Diego guys, I think Eno Saris ended up in this as well, would post pictures of their, beer, whatever beer they were drinking from whatever craft brewery around town or around the country or on vacation or whatever. And I've seen people complaining from that beer thread on Blue Sky, going like, oh, Blue Sky, it doesn't make it easy to find the beer thread. And come on, Blue Sky, let's make it easier to do that. We have a beer channel in our Discord that's just a bunch of pictures of beer. So the beer thread can move on over to the Section 1904 Discord channel, should it want to.
All right, there you go. See, these are all the benefits of being a subscribing member and a supporter of Section 1904. Plus, you get every single day. It arrived at 7:25 this morning. Consistently, John is right there about 7:20, 7:25. By 7:30, for the most part, you're going to get the front row seat email sent to you. That is a recap of all the things that John thinks you might be chatting about or that we might be chatting about. So if you want to stay in the loop on what's happening in sports and other things related to Section 1904, you can subscribe, and you're going to get the front row seat delivered right there to you each and every day. Is that the right way to say it? The front row seat. You're going to get front row seat. You're going to get John's. What's the right way to say this?
It's a newsletter.
It's a newsletter.
The front row seat.
It's like the MLS. People keep saying the MLS. I'm always like,
I think you have to say the front row seat. I mean, you can say front row seat newsletter, but you
get the front row seat newsletter. So you'll get this email delivered to you every day.
We're in California, Darren. All the highways and freeways have the in front of it. Newsletters do too.
I know. I saw this interview that Landon Donovan and Tim Howard did with Mauricio Pochettino, and all he keeps saying is the MLS, the MLS, the MLS. I'm just like, ugh.
Can we talk about
fuck's sake, God almighty, this is the domestic league. Can you not call it the MLS?
Can we talk about the quote? Because I saw someone else wrote an article about the quote.
Well, maybe we should save that. Maybe we should finish our Padres thoughts, unless you're finished with your Padres thoughts. It just does feel like, I agree, going back to finish our thoughts. While we got detoured by Discord and being a subscriber for as low as $5 a month, everybody. Bonus content, all that sort of thing. That Luis Arráez seems to be more and more a topic of conversation. And the more and more I think about it, even though there was a blip there where Arráez, I think, had a 4-hit game not that long after we had Dylan on the last time. I do think Tatis and Merrill and Machado and lengthening out the lineup at the end of it with Arráez, I think maybe that's the direction to go. So
yeah, I keep coming back to the thing in the beginning of the year where Schilt was saying that, someone was obviously not thrilled to not be leading off. And gee, I wonder who that would be. So I imagine if Luis Arráez was going any further down the lineup than 2, especially heading into his free agency, I imagine he would raise some hell about that, or his agent would raise hell on his behalf about that. So I don't know how...
Well, I think we're past that at this point.
I think so too, but the Padres... I used to talk about this all the time. The Peter Seidler, AJ Preller Padres have held themselves up as the most player-friendly organization that exists in baseball. At least they try to do that.
I mean, look at Manny. He's down there saying, don't listen to the fans when they're chanting your name.
But I don't think if Luis Arráez and his agent were sitting there going this is not okay, you're ruining his free agent value because you're trying to get a cheaper contract and blah blah blah, I don't think the Padres would be like, hey man, fucking deal with it. I think they would be like, okay, fine. If maybe we'll call around and see if someone else wants to bat you first or second in their lineup. I don't know. It just doesn't. Luis Arráez being the 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th hitter in the Padres lineup, I feel is not as easy to do as just penciling his name into that lineup card.
Oh, the other quick thing I wanted to say, because last night on Discord I did post the saddest thing I think I've ever heard Jesse Agler say since he was on the broadcast. I don't know if you didn't see this post.
I didn't. He does say some sad stuff sometimes, though.
Well, the saddest thing he ever said was now Elias Diaz will pinch hit for Maldonado.
I liked the AC stat that Brandon Lockridge.
Well, hold on. Then I have to say I have to credit AC because he put this in a tidbit last night. Last night was the 13th time that Diaz has pinch hit for Maldonado this season. It was the 12th time that Diaz made an out with doing so.
He had the stat where Lockridge came in the 7th inning and got his first multi-hit game of the year, which is just an amazing stat.
Yeah, it was funny. It was very funny. So I appreciate that from Kevin. I'm sure he's not checking out the Discord, but I was like, man, that is the saddest thing I've ever heard Jesse Agler say. Now here's Elias Diaz pinch hitting from Maldonado. I was like, oh, God, is that what it's come to? What is going on? I'd almost rather have a pitcher hit in that spot.
Do you see Campusano's taking reps at first? Maybe this is a sign that Luis Arráez is going off in a trade somewhere. They had Luis Campusano taking reps at defensive reps at first base yesterday.
I don't know who would want Luis Arráez, but
me neither.
Maybe somebody. Maybe somebody out there. Maybe this is part of the package for Jaron Duran. Maybe. We'll see. Maybe. So that's pretty much what I got on Padres for the day, Same. John, unless there's something else for you.
No, that's all I got. I think I figured out why I don't really understand what this Padres team is right now, and I think it's because no one really knows what the fuck's going on with Fernando Tatis Jr. I think so much of the identity of this team is they're gonna go as far as Tatis can carry them. I don't think Merrill's there yet, and Machado can't really do it by himself. But through the first month of the season, it was oh man, Tatis is carrying this team to it. And now we don't know. We don't know what's wrong with him. We don't know why he's not hitting the way he used to. We don't know if he's hurt from the fastball he took off the forearm when he was in Pittsburgh. If he can't figure out his new swing with the new step or what's going on. So my whole thing is there's just a cloud of mysterious future hanging over the Padres that's tied to I don't know, is Tatis going to wake up and be the guy he was in the first month of the season again? Or is this just the guy he is all year? I don't know.
I don't know either. I will also shout out my former colleagues, John and Jim, who did a funny bit yesterday where, and I'm tempted to steal it, except I don't have the information in front of me, and I'm not sure that I would remember. Did you see the pop quiz that Schaefer gave to Jim Russell?
No, I saw John's torn jeans, but I didn't see the pop quiz.
Yeah, well, Jim just got back from what looked like an amazing trip to Hawaii. But he said, can you name, I think it was 8, can you name the 8 different players who have played left field for the Padres this year? I was like, whoa, I had no chance at that one. I don't know if you could do it, and I don't have the list in front of me, so I'm not sure exactly.
I'm going to start writing down some names. All right, so you think it's 8?
It was either 7 or 8. I don't remember
Hayward,
exactly. Right.
Wade.
Right.
Lockridge.
Right.
I know Iglesias had a game out there.
That is correct. That's 4.
That's 4. I imagine we got a Connor Joe game at some point.
I don't think so.
I'll cross him off the list. Gavin Sheets, well-known left fielder. Gavin
Correct.
Sheets. All right, that's 5. Am I 3 short on this?
Might be 2. But again, I've sort of screwed this up by not knowing if it was 7 or 8. So, I'm not going to hold you to any account here. But
if I can figure out the answer to this by the end of this podcast, I'm going to.
Well, I'm just going to tell you. The one that you're probably not going to get is Oscar Gonzalez.
Oh, I forgot he existed, yeah.
Yeah, but
Isn't he in Japan
you're right.
or
Hayward, Sheets, Lockridge, let's see. Tirso Ornelas.
I forgot him too.
Yeah. So I thought that was a good bit. So credit where it's due. I know sometimes this podcast could sound like it's, well, especially you hate radio, but
hey,
I still, like I've said, it was a long-term relationship that has now ended, but I thought that was a good bit yesterday. So good on those guys for getting it done. All right. I got a text from John yesterday while I was out at SDFC training. By the way, the midweek show tonight, I must admit, I'm pretty proud of myself. Adrian's on vacation, so got that sucker in the can, ready to go. Marcus Ingvardsson, Mikey Varas, and we even checked in with Adrian, who's in Paris. So I got that show already shipped off to the iHeart studio, 6:00 tonight. And I went through the trouble, John, of tracking down where every one of the international call-ups is playing and how you can watch them play if you're so inclined. Yeah, I got to admit, I didn't realize that Finland was playing World Cup qualifiers. Like I thought everybody was just off on international friendlies, that this window was just for international friendlies, because that's what the U.S. men's national team in Mexico, Northern Ireland, Denmark. I didn't realize that that Luca Bambino is playing for the U.S. under-20s in Egypt.
Whoa.
Yeah. They're playing against Colombia at 7 a.m. I'm sure you can find a stream of that somewhere. But the U.S. men's national team, which is qualified for the under-20 World Cup, which is in September of this year, September and October. I don't know about that. I wonder what that's going to look like. I'll have to figure out what that looks like with our schedule. But Luca Bambino and the U.S. under-20s, they're playing in Egypt against Colombia and Egypt on Tuesday. So that's a lot of travel. That's a lot. But I didn't realize that Finland is playing a couple of World Cup qualifiers. They're playing Poland, I think, on Tuesday. And then I forgot who they're playing. But anyhow, listen to the show tonight. I tracked down where everybody would be playing. So if, in fact, you want to keep tabs on the SDFC players on international duty, John, you can go ahead and you can track them.
Not only do I want to keep tabs, I want to figure out a way to open up the Section 1904 budget so we can go to one of these games one of these days. But why is Adrian in Paris?
Vacation.
Oh, okay. I thought there was like a soccer match there that he had to call or something.
Finland, actually, this is a... Now, here I am selling Finland in the Netherlands on Saturday at 11:45 a.m. But Finland, Netherlands, John, in Group G in UEFA World Cup qualifying, that's an interesting one for match day 3.
That's not nothing. Netherlands.
It is not nothing. It's Poland, Finland 1 and 2 in Group G right now. So, that's to get called up to Finland when you're in a World Cup qualifier feels significant for me with Oni Valakari. I don't know that I realized that that's what was going on there with Finland. With the finish. So anyway.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
I can tell. You could probably find a stream of that if you're so inclined on.
Are you going to rat me out for texting you about the
Tibbs?
Oh, okay. I thought this was when I was going through the SDFC roster and rating the players based on their attractiveness.
No, but we can do that. I will say, sitting down with Marcus Ingvartsen, I was like, man, that's a good-looking dude right there.
Maybe we do the SDFC attractiveness power rankings on the Discord. We'll keep that one behind the paywall.
Okay. Well, because then we can post pictures. I think it'd be tough to do on a podcast without actual photographic proof of what it is that we're trying to say. But I will say, the Scandinavians, they're good-looking people. Anyhow, what was I saying? I got a text from John literally as I was turning my phone off to do these interviews that Tom Thibodeau had been fired by the New York Knicks. And it was all caps, and it just said, Tibbs fired.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, man. I mean, I sort of thought there was a chance, like a decent chance, sort of 50-50 in that neighborhood. I thought it was better than most people would have realized. Like, for a team that hadn't been to a conference final in 25 years, and this guy takes you to Game 6, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of, how could you do that to the guy who took you to the place that you haven't been in a quarter of a century? And I understand that sentiment will exist out there. However, having watched a lot of the Knicks, having seen a lot of Tom Thibodeau, I think it's relatable across the board in terms of sports. The NBA Finals get underway tomorrow, so you have at least another day to talk about this. But I've seen lists of candidates, and what I will say is I don't know that this is the right decision. I don't know that this will be proven to be the right decision, wrong decision. The one thing I do appreciate about it as a Knicks fan, and I think a lot of sports fans can appreciate this, is, they're saying we don't think he can win a championship. And if we don't think he can win a championship, then we have to make a change. I don't know that it's punishment specifically for Game 1. When you lose a game that you're up 14 in your building with less than 3 minutes to go, I think that is a damning loss, John. And I think you and I talked about it after Game 1. It felt to me like the series was over. It just felt like against the Pacers, that loss was going to come back and bite you. And it did. Now, I don't know that they would have won Game 7, but they would have probably gotten a Game 7 had they not completely collapsed in the first game of the Eastern Conference Finals. And I don't know that he's being punished specifically for that, as much as it's a sense of, can this guy win us a championship? And if the answer is no, then I think it's a credit to the organization that they're saying we need to find the person who we feel like and we believe can help us win a championship. And I appreciate everything that Thibodeau did. Tibbs brought he helped bring this dog shit franchise back to respectability. And that's saying a lot for how far back this thing was. This was one of the worst franchises in all of pro sports for years, which is why you see our fans act the way they do. But there's part of me that is worried, but there's also part of me that appreciates that they feel like if we don't believe that he is the guy that can help us win a championship, then we should make a change, because that's the level of commitment we now have with this team. And I do think in sports, sometimes, I think in a lot of other sports and a lot of other teams would just let whoever the coach was come back, or the manager come back and be like, oh, hey, we made it. We made a lot of money. The building was full. It was great. And I want to give them credit. I am worried about it. I don't know exactly what it is they're going to do. I can't imagine that they don't have a plan. These guys, they seem a little bit more dialed in than previous front offices for the New York Knicks. And I really do appreciate everything that he did. It was not easy to take that job, and it was not easy to find success with this job. And it is unique, especially when you're dealing with all the pressure. But I have to say, on one side of the scale is my trepidation. On the other side of the scale is, as a fan of the team, and I think as a fan of sports, if they're convinced that he's not the right guy, then you pull the trigger. And they did that, and I really hope this works out.
Yeah. I'm going to throw a couple comps at you. The first one, probably everyone who's listening to this podcast, and you will understand. And will understand that it's not a one-for-one comp. But in 2000 and 2001, the combined, the San Diego Chargers went 6-26. They were terrible. One of those years they went 1-15. The other one they went 5-11, and then they fired Mike Riley. And they hired Marty Schottenheimer. Marty Schottenheimer at that point had a reputation as a guy who could take a bad team and turn them into a good team, but he probably wasn't going to get you all the way to the promised land. And that's exactly what he did. Wow. Now, that's not exactly the reason that he was fired after the Chargers went 14-2 and lost in the playoffs, but it was definitely a part of the reason that he was fired.
100%.
That the GM in the front office believed, if we are going to win a championship with this team that seems good enough to win 14 games in a 16-game season, then we need to find another head coach that's going to get us there. Now, if they went with Norv Turner got them further in his first year than they had ever gotten with Marty Schottenheimer, and then the wheels kind of fell off. Shit happens. That feels comparable to this. The other comp I will make is the Detroit Pistons, who were coached by Rick Carlisle and went from a bad team to a good but weird team that focused very, very heavily on defense and had a center who was like 6'6", but awesome, who I think is now in the Basketball Hall of Fame, and Ben Wallace. And the Pistons said to Rick Carlisle, "Thank you for getting us here. We're going to hand the keys over to someone else, and he's going to take us to the promised land." And that person was Larry Brown. And the Pistons won a title, I think, in that next year with Larry Brown as their head coach. So that time, it absolutely worked out. There's a number of different examples you can give of teams basically saying to a coach, like, "Thank you for getting us here. You got us out of the muck and you got us into contention. We need someone else to get us over the top." I think Pat Riley was that guy with the Lakers, and then Phil Jackson was also kind of that guy with the Lakers later. So this happens. Maybe
Del Harris was the guy with the Lakers, and then he got replaced by Phil Jackson, right? Isn't that how that worked? Del Harris was the coach right before Phil Jackson came in, and they were okay. Like, they were good, but
it was like, hey, we got Kobe, and I think they even had Shaq at that point, and they're like, we need someone to just put us over the top so we can win. And they got Phil, and that's what happened. And that's what the Knicks are hoping to do. Probably not with Phil Jackson, but I guess it's in the realm of possibility that they call up like 90-year-old Phil Jackson and get him out of Montana and out of his recliner to come. Probably not happening. But no, it's, it is a defendable move, especially because Tibbs has always kind of had this reputation of he's going to work his guys so hard in the regular season that come playoffs, he's not exactly the right coach for the playoffs. Another way of thinking of that I heard someone describe yesterday that I thought was the right way of thinking about it with Tibbs was in the last few games against the Pacers, he found something with Landry Shamet and DeLon Wright, and it was like the first time those guys had seen the floor in months. And it was kind of like, hey, guy, the regular season is where you're supposed to try this stuff out so you know what works and what doesn't. So when you get to the playoffs, you know what adjustments to make. And Tibbs just goes like, no, these 6 are my best guys. These 6 guys will play. We will win all the games that we can win. And that was my vague Tibbs impersonation of his voice. But it just kind of goes to show you that, like, Tibbs doesn't really understand how to be a successful playoff coach, I don't think, or it does not appear. So it makes some sense that the Knicks would think that he's not the guy to get them to the promised land. I understand it. I'm not that mad at it. I understand it. But you always have to give credit to the guys who grabbed a team that was stuck in the muck and brought them into contention, and that's what Tibbs did. Also, funny thing I saw yesterday is it's the second time that Cat has gotten Tibbs fired.
I saw that too, I know. Got him fired in Minnesota, now he got him fired in New York. And listen, there was a lot more discontent that I think a lot of people realized. We would bring this up on the group chat because there was this shot from at the end of game one where, there were teammates like who were screaming at one another on the bench down the stretch. And a lot of it seemed to be centered around Karl Anthony Towns. Yeah. So, he was sitting there, and I want to say OG Anunoby sat down next to him, and you could tell that they were disagreeing about something, a rotation or whatever. And Karl Anthony Towns kind of got lost offensively on not to pin it all on him. That was a complete meltdown across the board. Some of it had to do with offense. Some of it had to do with defense. A lot of it had to do with the Pacers. But, there is this one shot. I don't know that it ever made the rounds. I don't really spend a ton of time on SportsCenter or shows like that. But it was an overhead shot, and it started with OG Anunoby, and Bridges tried to get into the middle. They were all sitting on the bench, and then Brunson came down, and you could tell Brunson was just like, everybody shut the fuck up, because we still got to play this game. And Towns said something, and then even Brunson kind of lost it. And Brunson stood up, and he started, when you always have one of these short guys taking out a big, he started yelling at Towns too. So there was a lot of stuff, and you keep reading about all the closed door meetings that the players had to have down the stretch, John. So the people that cover the team have been writing a lot about this, that, the Knicks had just some unexplainable losses. And it was like one closed door meeting after another with the players, So, I'm with you. I don't know that any Knicks fans like, okay, good riddance, get out of here, you bum. I think most fans probably feel the way I do, which is, this was not an easy thing. This was not an easy project to step into.
Right.
And he did step into it, and he was there, and he was a big part of bringing back just them looking like a functional organization. Felt like a Herculean task because they were so dysfunctional for decades. The owner's awful. He gets in fights with star players. He bans people from the stadium, gleefully laughing at them on his way out. He's like, fuck you, you're banned here forever. So, this is what you're dealing with. And yet still, we have a ton of people who still support him. So it ain't easy. The media, he hates the media. He just bans them left and right. He uses facial recognition to kick people out of Madison Square Garden. I mean, it's awful.
Yeah.
And one person had to be the forward-facing, person, and that was Tibbs. So, yeah. I do think that, but we said it, like you have championship coaches who are out there, and I don't know if Michael Malone or Budenholzer, I don't know if any of these guys are realistic, but when you do have championship coaches that are out there that are on the streets, and if you're not convinced that your guy's going to win a title, I don't know about some of these names that The Athletic is tossing out there. Dave Bliss, James Borrego, Mike Brown, maybe Mike Brown. Taylor Jenkins, what? Darvin Ham, but if you want to give me Michael Malone or you want to give me somebody who's got a little bit of championship pedigree, I'm all ears on and open-minded to all of those kind of suggestions.
Budenholzer, I think would be bad, if only because he kind of has that same problem as Tibbs in that he always seems to run up the score in the regular season, gets to the playoffs, has a hard time making adjustments. When I was younger, I used to call this the Bobby Cox problem, to cross over sports references. On the Tibbs thing also, I don't know that the Knicks were necessarily going to win that series against the Celtics if Tatum doesn't tear his Achilles.
Well, they were up 3-1.
They were up 3-1 after that game. Which they were probably going to win anyway. They were probably going to win, but I don't know. They got.
I'm with you. I understand. We'll never know.
Yeah, they got beat really bad in Game 5.
But that was another closed door meeting.
Yeah, shit happens. Michael Malone from Queens, New York, by the way, is probably the obvious and best choice. I've been peppering you with funny choices. I think Jeff Van Gundy going back to be head coach of the Knicks is both realistic and funny. I think Jay Wright becoming the the longtime Villanova coach, becoming the coach of the Nova Knicks, is funny and probably less realistic. Do you have any just kind of? I know you're not a huge NBA nerd like me, but do you have any kind of off the wall names that you wouldn't mind? Or is it just hey, if you're going with the not obvious choice, you're risking fucking this up too much?
Like Sam Cassell? Like a Sam Cassell type?
Like a Sam Cassell.
Who I told you yesterday as somebody who's a survivor of the 1994 NBA Finals. I remember Sam Cassell absolutely killing the Knicks at Madison Square Garden, and I would have a tough time embracing him as a head coach. Is that the kind of off-the-wall coach that you're talking about here? Or is Jay Wright an off-the-wall coach?
Jay Wright is an off-the-wall coach.
Just because he coached some of these dudes in Villanova, and he did win a couple championships. So
can I throw one at you and just see how you feel about it?
Sure.
Because Sam Cassell is a guy who it feels like he should have gotten his head coaching shot by now. But yeah, look, if Knicks fans are going to be mad about something that happened 30 years ago, cool. Don't hire Sam Cassell. Someone who is also
right. I don't know that I speak for all Knicks fans, but a significant percentage of us would be like, yeah, fuck that guy.
But someone who is going to get a shot at some point and would not be shook by the New York media at all, and has proven, at least at the G League level, to be a really good, interesting, inventive coach who also knows how to speak to superstar players, because at least for a small period of time, he was at least on the fringe of that category, is Jerry Stackhouse. And a lot of people have kind of considered Jerry to take over the Warriors when Steve Kerr and his back finally give in. But Stack would be a really interesting choice. I don't know if he's from New York, but Stack would be a really interesting choice for that team. I just don't know if they're going for interesting or if they're going for safe.
Well, I think if they wanted safe, they would have kept Tom Thibodeau. I mean, that would have been the safest thing to do, don't you think? It's a perfectly justifiable decision to keep him.
The safe thing is to get someone who has a ring and be like, we didn't think Tibbs was going to get a ring, but Michael Malone comes in here with a ring. We know he can win a ring, and it's all about rings.
Sure. Okay, so you're saying now that you've made the decision, you're talking about whether or not you're going to go safe or whether you're going to climb out on a limb. Yeah. Well, the other wrinkle in all of this, too, is that Jalen Brunson's dad is on the coaching staff.
Yep.
Rick Brunson is on the coaching staff.
Yep.
That'd be like having Fernando Tatis on the coaching staff and you fire Mike Schilt at the end of the year because you come up short in the postseason. Like, well, do you keep him? Like, you have to keep him. So it'll probably be a condition of any coach coming in that you keep Rick Brunson.
Yeah.
Or is Rick Brunson he can't be a candidate for this job? I can't imagine.
They can't do that. Honestly, the Leon Rose Worldwide West Knicks, this front office that has been really good, would absolutely be hiring Rick Brunson in this situation. But they're too smart now, Darren. They're not going to do that. They're
not going to go get David Fizdale just because he's got a hot wife on Instagram.
Look, everyone thought Fizz was going to be good. I don't know why that didn't work.
Yeah, I think we talked to Dan Devine from Yahoo.
Yeah,
a couple of weeks ago. And I had to admit, like, I don't know who the Oklahoma City Thunder head coach is. Can you tell us a little bit about him? So, that those guys always exist out there, I think is interesting. I just don't know that those guys exist to come in to a team that went to Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Final, right? That's a guy who you're building with. We talked a lot about him being up through a system, et cetera. That's why that made a lot of sense for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Is there a Rick Carlisle type out? Maybe that is Michael Malone. Whether he's from Queens or not, to me doesn't really matter all that much.
I know,
but it doesn't hurt. That definitely does not hurt.
Right.
I just, you're not rebuilding here. You're not rebuilding here. Maybe there's going to be a trade. Maybe there will be a significant trade. Which is why we sort of joked about Giannis and Budenholzer a couple of days ago. But that's a different situation. So I'm a little less inclined for some of the off the wall stuff, just because I think this isn't a project at this point.
Yeah, you gotta get it right.
You're sort of suggesting that the coach is the one who's going to and I loved your analogy of Marty Schottenheimer. Yeah. Marty is a Hall of Fame coach during the regular season, but 5-12 in the postseason. And, it wasn't just about personality conflict with him and A.J. Smith. And people can speculate all they want about, how Marty Schottenheimer would have won a Super Bowl here. I had my doubts. And so did people on the team, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, there were plenty of people I know. I was really close with a lot of those guys on that team. And they told me they didn't need Marty anymore yelling about one play at a time, man. They felt like they had grown to the point where they needed somebody to get them to the next level. They needed somebody to bring in a more modern form of offense where they could let the quarterback throw the ball a little bit, even while having LaDainian Tomlinson there. And I feel like the Knicks are that's a great comp, John, that the Knicks are in a similar situation where, I don't know that they need to go back to the drawing board and reinvent it. But, it's just, there's a lot of things that just weren't functioning well. And it was covered up because they had a lot of success.
But I think you can also look at this finals and be like, this is a finals that has shown you that in today's NBA that is more about parity than the NBA has ever been about parity. The things that are going to get you to the end of the playoffs, going to get you to the finals, going to get you a chance at a ring is depth and really good coaching.
Right.
Because these are probably two of the 3 or 4 best coaches in the NBA and 2 of the 3 or 4 deepest teams in the NBA. And they lean on that. That's how they won their series. Like, the Pacers aren't supposed to be here, but they have a lot of depth and they're incredibly well coached. And that's why I don't think you can do, like, Rick Brunson is a huge risk. You got no idea what you're getting from Rick Brunson as a head coach. That's why you can't do it. Mo Cheeks is on the Knicks bench. He's been a head coach everywhere. You can't cannot do Mo Cheeks because he has never proven that he is a coach capable of pushing a team to get better, smarter, and push them deeper into the playoffs and over the top of the potential that they've reached so far. So yeah, I think this is why I think it's just going to be Michael Malone. Michael Malone makes the most sense.
I'm good with it. Yeah, and you know, to your point, I mean, not to bore everybody with statistics, but when you look at minutes per game or total minutes played, you know, Bridges is the top of the list. Josh Hart is at the top of the list. The Knicks have like 4 guys in the top 10, you know, and you wonder why they look a little gassed when they're chasing the fucking Pacers up and down the basketball court. Well, you know, that's why. You know, in some ways it helps prepare you for the postseason, but in other ways you kind of go, yeah, man, that was a lot of minutes that they were, you know, chasing around the New Jersey Nets on a random January night for 42 minutes. You know, that seemed a bit unnecessary up by 15.
Yeah.
You know, what are we doing in the fourth quarter? And this is an ongoing theme for a lot of people who who follow the team. I know certainly on our group chat and even with John and myself. Yeah. You know, I mean, listen, there's a lot of Charger fans who probably still feel to this day, like, you know, that was the wrong decision. And I think part of that is because it was Norv Turner. But, you know, if you can go out and you can get somebody who's a proven winner, you know, I always thought the way that was framed in my mind was, you know, they wanted Norv Turner to be the offensive coordinator so badly to help take Phillip Rivers into the next era of what modern football looked like that they were willing to, they wanted him to be the OC so badly that they made him the head coach, you know, and I don't know that I'm totally wrong on that, but anyhow, so NBA Finals starting coming up tomorrow. And we'll hit you with a preview on tomorrow's podcast, which is the right time to do it, especially because it's a day game for the Padres with Dylan Cease and the San Francisco Giants. But were you surprised when you saw that?
Tibbs get fired?
Yeah, I was like, oh, wow, they did it.
I mean, I sent it to you in all caps. I obviously knew that it had a percentage chance of, it's the second year in a row where the Knicks go out and everyone blames Tibbs, right? No one's blaming Brunson. He played great. No one's blaming Josh Hart.
Taking more heat, I think, than people might realize.
Right. And it's like they get to the end and like even this year, there was like a little bit of like, last year was like a little bit of Randall and this year was a little bit of Cap, but most of the blame is getting put on Tibbs. And honestly, Tibbs was outcoached by Rick Carlisle, like cleanly outcoached by Rick Carlisle in that series in a way that I think even like kind of casual fans that were watching those games could see. And I think the Knicks just want to get, they want to get that taste out of their mouth of like, oh God, like we are at such a coaching disadvantage in this matchup. And the coaching's only getting better. It's only getting smarter. Like Tibbs is not a spring chicken, man. Like he's about to turn 70 and he's not about to, you know, Rick Carlisle, there's a cool story somewhere about Rick Carlisle completely reinventing himself as a coach like every few years. That's something that Tibbs has not really done at all, reinvented himself. And he might need to, or he just becomes, you know, the Marty Schottenheimer. I was like kind of rooting for him to go back to the Bulls and rebuild the Bulls into at least a playoff regular contender. Because I think that's just his role until he's done coaching, is take over a bad team and make them respectable and then hand the keys over to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. But you would agree, though, it's less like we are punishing you because you failed in the Eastern Conference and more, I just don't think you're the right person to take us to the next level.
We don't believe you're good enough for this.
I would agree with that. And from that, I think as a fan, I'm nervous, but I respect it. I do respect that the franchise has said, like, we just don't think he's the right guy to take us to the next level. Not we're scapegoating him, although, you know, I'm sure that there's some room in the conversation for that. That's how awful that game one was. But, all right. Well, we'll wrap it. We'll leave it there. One of these days, John, we'll talk about San Diego State leaving the Mountain West, but it's not
one of these days. Actually, before we get out of here, you were telling me about a documentary that you wanted to watch and that I kind of want to watch too. Do you want to tell everyone about the documentary and maybe we'll watch it together as a section?
Well, I don't know that it's available here, so I first have to check its availability. But for anybody that watched the Champions League final, the UEFA Champions League final over the weekend, PSG just hammered Inter Milan 5-0. Not a good game, but a phenomenal performance from PSG. And their manager is a guy named Luis Enrique. Luis Enrique used to be a manager of the Spanish national team and of FC Barcelona, and won a treble with FC Barcelona back in 2015. And there's this wonderful image of Luis Enrique and his daughter, Jana, X-A-N-A, Jana. And they celebrated on the field in Germany, I think it was. I think it might have been in Munich, as a matter of fact, of the two of them on the field after the game, planting the Barcelona flag in the middle of the pitch. And his daughter died, and I've only seen clips of this documentary of Luis Enrique, who ended up leaving Barcelona a couple of years later. He became the coach of the Spanish national team, had some success there, but ended up, walking away from it. And, his daughter died at 9. And part of the documentary is him just opening up and talking about this. And it's hard for me to understand it or relate to it. Obviously, somebody without a kid, and John, for you, you have a daughter who's similar in age. But, he talks about, like, there's this one clip that I think maybe people have seen of Luis Enrique talking about how when he went into his mother's house after Jana died, the mother had taken down all the pictures of her granddaughter. And Luis was like, where are all the pictures of Jana? And she says, I just can't. This is too emotional. This is too sad. And he's like, no, like, you have got to put these pictures back up. He's like, we were blessed with 9 of the best years ever. Like, we're always going to remember her. And I don't know how many people that are listening to this podcast have ever dealt with that kind of loss. Hopefully nobody. I hope there's not a single person who's ever dealt with it. In my family, many, many years ago, my mother's cousin, her daughter passed away, had diabetes, juvenile diabetes, and died when she was like 7 or 8. I mean, you just haven't experienced tragedy until you've seen a casket that small in person. It's just like, oh, God. But anyway, not to turn this into something quite dark, but I really want to watch this podcast because I want to learn more about Luis Enrique, the football manager.
Yeah.
And also there's these amazing clips of him telling Kylian Mbappe, who was then with PSG at the time, like, you're never going to be the kind of player that you should be if you don't start learning to defend better. So it's a lot of football stuff and it's a lot of life stuff. And I don't know that the documentary is available in the United States, but John and I have talked a little bit about, just giving everybody something to consume as a group, as a section. And if this is available, maybe this is one we'll toss in front of you.
So, good news, bad news here. We're behind the paywall, so we're amongst friends. There does not appear to be a place that is streaming this for an American audience. That being said, are you familiar with Daily Motion? They're kind of like a knockoff YouTube. They're just a video site. There are 3 episodes of this documentary. It's broken up into 3 like 45-minute episodes. The name of it is in Spanish, but it translates into "You have no fucking idea." And all 3 episodes appear to be in full available on Dailymotion. So I will link those in the show notes. I can also maybe throw them in a Discord channel for Section 1904. And everyone can find 2 or 3 hours if they're interested enough to watch this. And then you and I can maybe do a little, what did we think of it? I will tell you, the last time I watched a documentary about that involved the kind of sudden unexpected death of a child, it was called Dear Zachary. And it like literally broke me internally. And I've never completely come back from it. So this should be fun. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, and again, it's appealing to me because I'm a Barcelona fan, and I've always rooted for Luis Enrique. I just always have appreciated his style, and also the thing that the PSG fans did at the end of it. Like I said, there was this image of 2015 when he was the head coach at Barcelona, and he and his daughter are out there, and they plant this flag in the middle of the field. And at the end of the Champions League final, the PSG fans unveiled a huge tifo of Luis Enrique and his daughter. This actually gives me chills just even mentioning this. And they had this tifo with them that they brought into the stadium, and they unfurled it right at the end of the match, and it was Luis Enrique and his daughter planting a PSG flag on the field, and like to even have that prepared to go. Wow! And by the way, PSG's coming to the United States, part of the Club World Cup field of 32. That's starting in a couple of weeks. They will be up in Seattle. I mean, if I'm the Seattle Sounders, and I'm not real happy about the payout that we're getting here anyway. The Seattle Sounders are protesting about how much money they are not making for participating in the Club World Cup. And then you have PSG, which is like, yeah, we're totally going all in on this. We're going to embrace this. We're going to win this. This is a big deal for us. You can make upwards of $120 million, I think, if you can win this. That might be an absolute bloodbath in Seattle. So, I'm not so sure that I would want to play PSG, but it's an amazing opportunity in a couple of weeks. So anyhow, I've never really liked PSG, and there's a whole story about sports washing that is associated with them because they're owned by the Qatari sports agency and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But, listen, sports washing obviously is just winning. So I don't even know who to complain to about it anymore. I feel like it's just over. Like the sports washing has kind of won. So
I mean, the opposite of sports washing is gatekeeping, right? And it's like that's not that much better. So you just live with it. We had a World Cup, in Qatar. We're gonna have another one in Saudi Arabia. So what are you supposed to do? You're just one person with a microphone. Can only control so much, Darren. Actually, to end this on a fun note, there's a there's a church around my neighborhood that has decided this morning that they're going to build like a 60, 70 unit apartment building of, I don't know, about 100 feet that way for no good reason. And everyone in the neighborhood's like, oh, what can we do? I'm only one person. I'm like, I got a microphone, damn it. I got a podcast. I will raise hell if this actually becomes a realistic thing. I will start a separate podcast that just destroys these people so that this doesn't happen. Because that's how my NIMBYism works now.
Good on you. So what don't you want now? Are you one of these guys who you just don't want multi-unit dwellings?
No, there's a church next to my neighborhood, and the church has been complaining that they're not making enough money. So now they're a school during the day, which the neighborhood's already upset about. Like, why the hell is there a private school happening right here? And there's people coming into our neighborhood to drop off their kids and pick up their kids, and that's a whole thing. And now this morning, they're like, actually, we're going to build a 60 to 70 unit building right here on the church grounds, and we're going to charge rent. And I'm like, you're a non-profit. You're not allowed to just be a fucking property manager because your church doesn't make enough money. Like, close shop and open up somewhere else. Anyway, I'm getting into my whole thing. Turning into Mad Dog right here on the podcast.
You are. You should run for Carlsbad City Council.
Someday.
You ever thought about running for office?
Yes.
Really?
But I've said and done too many stupid things in front of a microphone and a camera. I think it would come back to bite me.
Yeah, that's the thing I worry about too. I once upon a time invited Scott Peters. He was on the show a handful of times. You know who Scott Peters is?
Yes, very well.
Yeah, I invited him to meet me. I don't think he'd mind me sharing this with anybody. And actually, what I was looking for, I was actually going to ask Scott Peters. This was years ago, and now I'll start telling a lot of these stories about kind of sort of the end of the road coming in radio, and figured it was time for me to explore some other options.
Yeah,
and I'm talking like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I invited Scott Peters, and we went, and we met for a beer in La Jolla. And, I was like, I'm thinking about, what's next after radio. And really what I was asking was how to be like a communications manager for a politician.
Yeah.
And instead he was trying to convince me to run for San Diego City Council. I was like, wait, what? This is not what I was interested in. I want to be, like a spokesperson. I want to, speak on somebody's behalf. Like, that's what I really want to do. I want to be, what's her name? Caroline Levitt. I want to, that's the job I want.
See, I want to be the mayor of Carlsbad. That's what I want. It's just, I'm never going to get there.
Well, you never know. But yeah, I always remember that with Scott Peters. He's like, well, this city council seat's open and that city council seat's open. And where do you live? Well, you should run for this one here. And I was like, wait a minute, run for office? Like, I'm not. It's not what I was trying to say. But I'm with you. I don't need anybody looking into my closet. That's for sure. That's for damn sure. No, thank you at all. All right, thank you everybody for the support. Thank you everybody for subscribing and for listening. And don't forget SDFC Midweek Live, 6 o'clock, San Diego Sports 760. Sometimes we can take some of these interviews and post them here on Section 1904. So we will make them available, but you can also track that down on the iHeartRadio app. We'll talk to you Thursday.